good evening. Could you tell the audience a little bit about you, what you're studying, where you are from, just to give a quick introduction?
Hi everyone, I'm from Bangladesh. I'm studying in the 11th grade in Southbury School, and so that's about me. My hobbies would be writing, and to be honest, Learn with Leaders was like a messiah in my life at a time where I really needed that. So, like, it's a great honor to be here today. So, thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you, Ariba, for being here today. Ariba, how has it been, being a student in Bangladesh? How is it different? How challenging it is for you there in terms of the access you have? And, how has Learn with Leaders created any kind of impact in your life ever since you met us?
So for over here for us, it's we have really good education. That's not a problem for us. For the academic subjects, that's great. But I feel like we really have a lacking when it comes to extracurriculars or just things that develop our personalities more than our minds. So Learn with Leaders in that aspect has really helped me a lot because I have done all these programs where I got to talk to people from so many different diverse backgrounds as well as from my own country. So I got to know that like people living like a mile away from me can be so different and so much more diverse than I am. So that it has like really helped me branch out.
So, did you make friends across the world?
Yes, I made friends from Canada, like my teammate for the entrepreneurship program, Hyungwoo. Like we still talk on Instagram, and Ved from India.
That's brilliant. So I know that you're a really good writer, and I've also reviewed some of your work. I would really want you to tell us what inspires you to write, and what advice can you give high school students like you who are into writing in terms of how they can improve their writing and put their point across like you do?
What inspires me, I guess it would be the people around me. Like sometimes even people around me don't realize how much they've inspired me. Sometimes I tell my friends that this thing you've done had really inspired me at that moment, and they were like, I had no idea. So that people and experiences, of course. And for people who like want to become better writers and want to get their points across, I feel like the most important thing that they have to do is observe and notice because the more you see, the more you write. And of course, read a lot. You can never write well if you don't read a lot. You can, there are exceptions, but I would say on a like general basis.
That's a very interesting point, Ariba. I think observe and notice is very interesting because no school curriculum actually teaches us to observe and notice, but just being aware of what you see, I think is has a hidden inspiration everywhere around us. And I still remember reading some of your first writings, and I was like, oh my God, is she really a kid in high school who's writing all of this? I wish I could still write as well as you do, and it's brilliant. So, Ariba, tell me, have you had an opportunity to speak at a global platform? When was that, and how was that experience?
That was actually my first global experience speaking on a platform was with Learn with Leaders, the Imperial program, the Speakers Club. And I couldn't believe that there were people from USA and people from England and Africa and from all different continents who were actually listening to me. Like it seems hard to get even people who live like next door from me to listen to what I say. But then over here, there were people from millions of miles away who were listening and they were enjoying it. That's what was most like frightening and exciting as well. That I could like make a good impression in front of them.
Oh, I think you were really good, and I think being on a global platform and being so confident is really commendable at your age because most kids are even scared to talk in front of an audience. So I'm sure all the communication work you're doing yourself has really, really helped in your progression because I have seen you grow over the past 10 months that I know you, and I think you've come a really long way from our first conversation. So it's very, very heartening to see you grow. So tell me, as a student, what advice would you want to give to your educators in terms of changing the education system? Whether in terms of academics or what do you think is missing in the education system? Because one part of why I started Learn with Leaders is because we really want to see how we can create new experiences for students and help schools also build those experiences. So what is it that you would want to change in the education system, and that could probably help get us some insights into your mind as a student?
One advice that I would really like to give to educators is that to focus more on developing kids, students' personalities than their minds. Like not shut off textbooks completely, of course. Developing a mind is something that is like the job of education. But also, like most people are so focused on developing their minds that they completely forget about their personalities. So we judge people based on their IQ, but I feel like developing your EQ is also equally important, if not more. So that's the advice I would like to give. Like, focus more on making people than making machines who get good grades.
Oh, well, that's very well said, Ariba. I think making machines getting good grades. I think over the past 10 months, if I've interviewed 1,500 students, this is a common statement I've heard across all my interviews that, I just don't have the ability to, do rote learning or remember things. But if I'm getting judged only on that criteria, that doesn't work, because numbers may be in everything, but that's not the only way to judge a student. And I think the world, the way it's evolving, they will need more people like you who are creative, who are problem solvers. And I know that you pushed yourself out of the boundaries that you're in, and I've seen that fight put up by you, and it is really, really heartening to see that you decided to step out of that particular machine that was given to you. But I think that's an inspiration for other students too, to voice their opinion to the schools that don't judge us by grades. We are just more than just grades and numbers. So Ariba, if you were to create, a system that actually should work for schools in terms of grading a student or judging a student, what are some of the criteria you would want to bring in? Imagine you are the head educator at a school.
That's such an interesting question. Um, if I was the educator for like the final exams that students have, I would divide the marks, like 50% of your grade goes into what you write, because like being able to do well on paper is also important. Like grades do matter, but they're not the most important thing in the world. And for the other 50%, I would judge them on their creativity, and not just like one thing. Like in our school, they used to judge us on art, and that was it. I was a terrible artist. So that was like very hard for me. So I would judge students based on any creative ability they have, whether it's dancing or singing or debate or art or writing or poetry, whatever it is. And also like some part of it should go into interviews, like talking to students about things that they like want to talk about, want to discuss about. So they would also like get grades based on how well they can speak, because in the real world, I that's one thing I learned, that in the real world, if you don't speak, nobody's listening. So
No, that's right. I wish your school would let you take over the school for a week and you could implement some of these things. I mean, actually, I would cancel exams. If I was made the head of education across the world, I would cancel exams everywhere in the world. Because, after being an entrepreneur for the past 15 years, if I've learned everything, life is an open book. Why should there be exams based on remembering something out of a book? Because you'll always have access to the world when you're trying to solve a problem. At the same time, there are very few kids who land up coming into the problem solving mode because they're so stuck onto that method that they've been told to do, that learn from this book, that's how it happens. And slowly killing the creativity of students. Ken Robinson put it so beautifully in a TED talk that he says the schools kill creativity. And I think what he's trying to talk is that each child is an individual. And some of the kids I've interviewed, and you've echoed the same thing, that if 5% of the students are top graders, and that's what a school wants to look at, then 95% of the world is average. And the difference is being made by the average kid. And I have high regard for kids who get good marks, and I have nothing against it. But when that one point in life comes when you don't get the grades, it just tears apart the child, because that's you're setting up a child for failure in that sense, right? If you're just going to have one benchmark of success for them. I don't know what's your opinion on that.
yes, the standards that schools set, that you have to like do this, you have to do that. I'm gonna be very honest. I was very much into that standard. Getting good grades was always very important to me. It still is. And also like getting good positions and everything. At that time, it felt like the most important thing in the world, and that's how it was portrayed to us. Like if you're not in the top three, you're not important. That's how they used to, like, everyone used to make us feel. Our teachers, our parents, even some of our peers used to make us feel like if you aren't on the top, then you aren't important. You have to be good at something to be talked about. But like I realized that, as long as you're existing, you're important. You don't have to do something great. At least when you're like 12 years old, you're just supposed to be like, enjoying life. What's this? Like you have to reach a benchmark, climb these stairs, and reach the top. You're only 12. How do you like even reach the top when you're just 12?
And I honestly don't believe that everybody should reach the top, because there could be so much to do on the ground itself, right? Because if somebody is not academically inclined, if somebody doesn't like maths, for example, you can push the child to do maths and try and get frustrated, and that also gets their confidence low. I think working on the strengths of a child and developing that individuality is the only way for our education to go, because at the end of the day, if the 95% students feel that they are no good or they're not important the way you feel, then where will the world get problem solvers from? Because grades can only define a certain intellect, but they cannot be, defining what that 95% is today. And I think that's a very important point that you bring about, that because kids, whatever they're told, they believe. So they believe that the top three are the best kids in the school. But what about a child who's going and performing poetry at a global platform? What about a child who started a business at 12 years old? What about a child who's written a book at 12 years old? Who is actually grading them? Who's actually bringing them into the limelight of saying, oh my God, this person is actually playing sports and is really good. Sports still get some recognition. But a dancer or a singer at that level, they consider them hobbies, which is not fair, because sometimes it's not a hobby. Somebody can be a really really good talented singer, but a parent would say, oh, this is a hobby, right now you study, because that's important, which is not something I feel is fair. And I see the smile on your face, because we've all been through that, I guess, at some point in our lives. I mean, I used to play badminton and I was a very passionate badminton player, and there came the decision that I had to take my boards and I had to give up on my badminton. But it was probably the hardest decision I ever made to give up on a sport I so loved. And as luck would have it, I was a good student, but my board exams, my results tanked, and I was made to feel like the worst student in the school, despite being a good student all those years, and for no fault of mine, right? I mean, it was a great paper, I get great exams, and that led me to believe that if one exam can define who I am, I don't want to be in that system. And it's taken me a good 23 years to get to that level where I say, enough is enough. Somebody has to stand up and talk for it. And I'm glad that I have so many students like you behind me who echo the same thing. And that gives us so much confidence in what we are doing. And I think one day we shall be able to create a world, where we all feel like we're all important. I don't think anybody should have the right to make you feel not important, because the only validation we should need is from ourselves, right? How can a system validate us on who we are, which fundamentally is flawed?
What's sad is that most people take 16, 17 years to realize this, that the only validation we need is from ourselves. Like those childhood years are spent under the trauma of thinking that what everybody else thinks is the most important. And it's sad that it takes so many years for people to realize that.
Ariba, it took me all these years to realize that at my age. And I think the day I realized that I am enough changed my life. And it was too late by then. And then I stepped down and said, I'm going to go down and start changing this for kids who are very young. And I have two kids of my own who became a very strong inspiration to get into it at a very early age for them. And if I get my kids on an Instagram, you'll realize I think they pretty much feel like they are enough. And sometimes it's actually gone the other way, where I have to ask them, can you please attend this class? It's important to be in the class. Can you please switch on your video? So I'm in like now that situation of a mother who is literally controlled by her kids, but I love it because I think they are curious, they're creative. I've instilled them values where they don't get affected by anybody. And that again has its pros and cons, but I don't think they get affected literally by anyone. And I just don't want anybody to kill that for them. because they are the individuals, and that's what I hope for the entire education world, the entire, student base that's going to come in, to believe that you're enough and you should know that you're enough and you don't need anybody to come and validate what you're doing. Because if you are happy, you will be successful in whatever you do. But if you're unhappy, even if you're successful, it won't matter. But then you're going to drag your feet over it, right? At the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly. It's not right to listen to anybody's definition of success and then make decisions for yourself. One thing that you said about the hobbies part is something that I really related, because my parents still think that like English or writing is something that is just a hobby for me, and most people in our country really believe that arts is something that you choose when you're not good at science or commerce, which is like absolute nonsense, because people choose arts because they're good at art, not because they're not good at science or commerce. There's no like negative with it. It's all positive. They like arts, they study arts. But for
Correct.
most people in our country, they think that arts is the third choice. So if you're the most brilliant person in the world, you choose science. If you're
Yeah.
not good at that, you're an average, you choose commerce. And if you're like a complete dumb, then only you choose arts, which is so frustrating. And I have no idea how to get past that. Like, it's very difficult. And the people who think that aren't even here on this live today. It's like people my generation who think the opposite.
Ariba, you're so bang on. When I was in school and nothing has changed, I'm assuming in the last 23 years, if you were really brilliant and geeky, you were science, right? And, then okay, you'll do something, you'll become a CA, you're commerce. But you know how this translates after 2 years? Is when you get told that either you're an engineer, doctor, lawyer, CA, or you're a failure. That's how our career choices were laid out in front of us. That here are 4 choices or you're a failure. And honestly, we believed it because, I grew up in an age of no internet, no phones. We had access to zero information. So we literally took everything that was told to us. But what is shocking is that I interview students today who come and tell me that's the same thing they're told, especially in Asia. Across Asia. I'm not talking about India, but across Asia, it's again and again the same career choices. And I think it's because parents are scared. Parents are scared to leave their comfort zone. Parents are scared of trying something new. The world has changed like I don't know how many times over, but they still feel comfort in making a child a doctor, a lawyer, or a CA. But world is not getting changed by doctors, lawyers, and CA, all the time. That's a fair career choice to have. But what if a child doesn't want those career choices? What if a child wants to be an author? What if a child, wants to really be a YouTuber or a podcaster? Those are real careers today. But I think just having to live, somebody else's dream is not fair. To impose it on the child is not fair. Listening to what our children want is probably the most important thing for a happy world, because only happy kids can create a happy world. I think that's just the way what I believe. And I'm sure as a child, you would tell me that what you would tell us as a future leader of what would it take to create a happy world for everyone.
I think that people should just do what they love and love themselves. If somebody is okay with earning less and doing what they love, then who are we to tell them, no, you can't do what you want to do? So, does that mean there are no publishers or there are no writers or dancers or singers in the world? Not everybody like goes to the level of, say, Taylor Swift, but there are
Correct.
people who have the same talent as her, and if they are happy being a singer, if they're happy like painting art and selling it on the streets, then it's up to them. But our parents feel that they are protecting their children by driving them towards the more desired careers like doctors and engineers. So the children will never go hungry or something. They will always have a safety net to fall back on. But what if somebody wants to fly? They don't want that safety net. The safety net is like a fish net for them, where they're like being suffocated. But for parents, they only think this like one logic that it's always a safety net, but sometimes it's a fish net, and this person wants to fly and not like be tied down. So that's something I feel like is really hard to get across to people, but parents like you will understand. So I'm hoping the next generation has it better. I really hope so.
Trust me, I am really, completely an outsider mother who doesn't even know what their kids' homework is for the last 1 year. So I think I am the other extreme. But you're right, and I think there your writer talent comes out. The way you put out the safety net with the fishnet, I think you should put out a blog article, and I'll be very happy to share it on Learn with Leaders. I think the way you put it is brilliant because I think it is out of fear of failure that a parent is doing this, and we should understand and appreciate that fear of a parent. My parents had that probably, right? Because if you're a CA, I'm a CA, so if you're a CA, at least there's something assured in your life. You'll always have a degree and it is safe. And but the thing is, what if I didn't want safe? And that's what you're also echoing, right? Because I spent a very large part of my life in finance. When I was just super creative, it took me like 22 decades to realize that my heart was in creating things, and I was not somebody who was supposed to be sitting on Excel sheets or behind a computer. I was always meant to be creating things, and it took me so much time to realize that now. I mean, half the things at times I just like sit with kids, and whenever I'm interviewing them, also I say, create something for me right now, and they're like, what should I create? I said, I can't tell you what to create. I'm not your teacher who's gonna be like, telling you draw a circle, now color it red, now put two dots. I'm just giving you an open canvas. Create something that you want to create. And I think that's what we need to do. Bring in a real open canvas for students to be able to write the story that they want to write. And I'm not saying we can change the entire education system, but having that space of freedom for kids like you, I think is extremely important. So, Rebert, tell me, what is your vision of a world that you want to create?
My vision of a world that I would like to create would be a place where like nobody has to feel less than somebody. Like capitalism is already like such a big part of our lives. But if one person feels that they are enough, then that is enough to change this world. Like nobody should feel the need to do something. Nobody should feel the need to study a particular subject or the need to wear makeup or the need to do something that they don't want to do. They should do stuff because they want to. And it should like the biggest thing I would say is that do something because you want to do it, not because you need to. Nothing is a necessity except for air and water and food. So as long as you have that, nothing else is like
You really should be a writer.
in life. Nothing else is necessary in life. It's all like temporary, and you can choose anything you want at any time of the day or any part of your life. But for the thing you said that a place where students can express themselves, when I was in school, I always wanted to have this one class of 40 minutes or an hour where I could sit with my friends and we could talk about like normal stuff, and like we're talking about now, a world that we would like to envision or something that is our goal or what we want to do. But it never happened. Most of our classes were like science and maths and economics and English, Bangla, all these classes. So we never got that one class where we could like become really vulnerable and talk about things that scare us or things that motivate us. So most of my friends, if you ask them what is it that motivates you, they're gonna say that um, I know, but I can't say it. Like they know what motivates them, but they cannot express it, and I feel so like bad for them because they probably like deserve to be here talking to you as much as I do, but because they haven't had the practice, they don't feel comfortable sharing their thoughts. And even though like they have the potential, their thoughts are the stars that they can't fathom into constellations. I'm quoting Fault in Our Stars.
I'm sure you're going to send me a blog article after we do this live that I'm going to publish with a really, really happy heart.
I really wish that they would have been able to express their thoughts, and I believe that when they go to university, I hope they'll get the chance, and I hope they'll try at least. The trying is the most important thing. Nothing gets handed out to you on a plate. Like my best friend, she used to be very introverted at one point in her life, and but like she's completely changed now because she knows that this isn't like getting you anywhere. She's the one who like told me that like she learned to be more extroverted and like speak because she realized that like nobody's sitting around waiting to hand out opportunities to her. She's going to have to grab them. So that conversation with her was really inspiring for me.
Something very interesting you mentioned, and I am I bring up very, very strong topics in all my, Coffee with Leaders sessions as well. And I think one of the sessions I am really been thinking of doing is a fear hack. We don't talk about our fears. We don't talk about what makes us vulnerable. And I think as students, that's the first thing we should be talking about, because, going down deep into that fear is so important. I used to literally not be able to sleep when I had an exam, and I would wake up the entire night. I literally like used to wake up 24 hours at a stretch when I had an exam. I was so scared. And you won't believe, in fact, 2 days ago I sat and I was thinking, what was that deepest fear of exams that just made my heartbeat go fast? I would blank out in a paper. And I realized it was the fear of failing my parents. What if I get bad marks? I'm going to, literally fail my mother, whom I really, really feel inspired by. What does she think if I get bad marks? And the fear was not of the exam. It was actually the fear of failure of people who love me, who thought I was really good. But again, it was just about clearing that exam with good marks. And I think going deep down into our fears and what makes us vulnerable can ease a lot of anxiety and stress at an early age, because ultimately what we don't talk about starts registering somewhere with us slowly and builds up into whatever you're talking about, your friends. You don't want to talk about it. You start keeping things to yourself, and slowly you become an introvert, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you are trying to protect yourself from being spoken to about something you don't want to talk about. But who gave you that fear? How did that fear come in at the first place? These are things that nobody talks about, and I think they're more important because the fears are given to us from at a very, very early age. Like, even I mean, as a mother, I would do it, right? When my kids are playing in the park, I would put fear saying, hey, don't go up that slide, it's too high for you. But then I have actually instilled a fear in my child to climb up high. And tomorrow when the child is climbing up a mountain, they're like, hey, you told me not to climb up high, right? And I think protecting these fears, I know it's small, starts like a small thing, but they become like very big issues as we grow up. And because people are not aware of these fear creation points, we're not able to even delete them from a memory. And I mean, that's a whole new topic to talk about, but I think fear hacks could really help kids to come out. Like, so if I ask you, and I know it's a live session, if you're comfortable sharing, what is your biggest fear?
My biggest fear is the same as yours. The one about like failing people who love me. That's like something that everybody shares to some extent. And also like my one of my biggest fears is that like maybe I make the wrong choice. Like maybe at this point I think I want to do something, and then I'll do it, and when I do it I'm going to realize I don't want this. If I think if I choose science, then I'm gonna like miss English later on. If I choose English, I'm gonna miss science later on. So I guess it's fear of missing out. It does have a name. So yeah, I have that FOMO. Yeah, missing out on career choices, because at this point I have to really decide. I don't have to decide, but I should. People keep telling me to decide what I want to do. So like that's I can decide because I don't know if I would be making the right choice while deciding.
But is it
Yeah.
fear of missing out, or is it the fact that your heart wants to do something else and you've been told to follow a different choice and you're not able to make the choice?
What is this attack? Like I'm being personally attacked right now. That's true. I mean, there was one point in my life where I used to like force myself to like physics, and I used to tell myself that NASA should be my dream. But
Hmm.
in the eighth grade, in the eighth grade, and then as I got older, I realized that it's not my dream. It was just that I was told that people who dream this are winners, and I wanted to be a winner, so I realized I forced myself to believe that NASA is my dream. It really wasn't. I'm not very interested in
Trust me,
becoming an
Ariba,
astronaut.
you are more of a winner than you even know. Like, I can tell you that in the past 1 year that I have met so many students from like almost 32 countries, and you have really great talents, and we would support you in every way like we've been supporting you. But you are already a winner. I don't think it'll take a NASA to make you a winner. You're winning every day because you're fighting your circumstances, and don't give up on your dream of writing. I think that's one advice I would give to you as a mentor. I think you're a great writer. You're super talented. Start submitting your work to, in fact, writing professors across the world who may actually take you on as a research assistant or something that could come out to be a very, very interesting way for you to express your writing. But thank you so much for joining this session today. And I cannot tell you how much I've enjoyed this conversation with you, like I always do. Love our conversations. And thank you to the entire audience for being here. And I would say that there have been some very thought-provoking conversations here today, which we all shy away from. It'd be great if all of you share this amongst your school communities and we start a conversation going. That's what Learn with Leaders do. Thank you, everybody. You were in a live session with Ariba from Bangladesh, Southbury School, and Gunchan Agarwal, co-founder Learn with Leaders.
Thank you
you
so
so much,
much for
Ariba.
having me. Some of my friends are in the live. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much for having me. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye, Ariba. Thank you.